The morning sun painted golden streaks across the Pacific Ocean as Taeyeon Kim stood on the deck of the research vessel, Poseidon's Grace, his dark hair whipped in the salty breeze while he checked the equipment one final time. Today would mark their deepest dive yet into the Mariana Trench, deeper than any human team had ever gone before. "Are you sure about this dive, Taeyeon?" asked Minho Park, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. The marine engineer had spent 3 hours checking every bolt and seal on their submersible. "The readings we got yesterday were strange, really strange." Taeyeon nodded slowly. For weeks, their instruments had been picking up electromagnetic signals from the deepest part of the trench. The patterns made no sense. They'd pulsed like a heartbeat, but no known sea creature could generate such powerful signals from those crushing depths. "That's exactly why we need to go down there," Taeyeon replied, his voice steady despite the nervous energy in his stomach. "We're scientists. Strange things need explaining." Jiwon Lee looked up from her tablet where she was reviewing their dive plan. The young xenobiologist had joined their team fresh from Seoul National University, eager to discover new forms of life in the deep ocean. Her specialty was studying creatures that lived in extreme environments, but even she seemed worried about today's mission. "The pressure down there will be over 1,000 times stronger than at sea level," she said quietly. "If something goes wrong with our submersible, we won't have time to think about rescue." Yoonji Choi finished her communication systems check and walked over to join the group. As their communications specialist, she would maintain contact with the surface team during their descent. Her job was to make sure they never lost touch with the world above, no matter how deep they went. "All systems are green," Yinji announced. "But I have to agree with the others. Those electromagnetic readings are unlike anything in our databases. Maybe we should send down a drone first." Taeyeon understood their concerns. The Mariana Trench was already one of the most dangerous places on Earth. At its deepest point, the water pressure could crush a human body in less than a second. Their submersible was built to withstand such forces, but it had never been tested at the depths they planned to reach today. Still, something deep inside Taeyeon pushed him forward. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe it was the same drive that made humans explore every corner of their world, no matter how dangerous. He had dedicated his life to understanding the ocean's mysteries, and today might bring the discovery of a lifetime. "We go together," he decided, "all 4 of us. If we're going to make history, we make it as a team." 2 hours later, their submersible depth walker descended through layers of blue that gradually turned to black. Taeyeon piloted the craft while his teammates monitored their various systems. The deeper they went, the more alien their world became. Schools of strange fish with glowing bodies swam past their windows. Jellyfish the size of cars drifted through the water like living ghosts. At 3,000 meters down, even these creatures disappeared, leaving them alone in a world of eternal darkness. "Temperature is dropping fast," Minho reported, watching his instruments. "We're at 2 degrees above freezing." "Pressure is now 800 times normal," added Jiwon. "But our hull is holding perfectly." Yoonji maintained steady contact with the surface team, reporting their depth and status every few minutes. Her calm voice helped everyone stay focused. As they descended into the abyss at 7,000 meters, their sonar detected something massive on the ocean floor. The electromagnetic readings that had brought them here suddenly spiked, filling their instruments with chaotic data. "What is that?" whispered Jiwon, staring at the sonar display. The object was huge, easily 200 meters long. It sat motionless on the seafloor, partially buried under what looked like a recent landslide of rocks and sediment. "Could be a whale carcass," suggested Minho, though his voice carried doubt. "No whale gets that big," Taeyeon replied, maneuvering their submersible for a closer look. "And the electromagnetic signature is too strong." As they approached the massive form, their external lights began to reveal something impossible. The object had a shape that no earthly creature possessed. It was long and serpentine, covered in what appeared to be scales that caught their lights and reflected them back in rainbow patterns. This is not possible, breathed Juwon, her scientific mind struggling to process what her eyes were seeing. The creature, for it was clearly alive despite its stillness, had four powerful limbs ending in clawed hands. Its head was massive, easily the size of their entire submersible, with features that reminded Taeyeon of the dragons from ancient Korean legends his grandmother used to tell him. But this was no legend. This was real, and it was trapped. Look. At the rocks, Minho pointed at the landslide that had partially buried the creature. They're fresh. This happened recently. Taeyeon moved their submersible around the massive form, studying it from different angles. The creature's chest rose and fell in slow, labored movements. It was breathing, but something was wrong. Its breathing seemed too slow, too weak. Its gills are damaged, observed Juwon, pointing at torn tissue along the creature's neck. The landslide must have injured it. As if sensing their presence, the creature's enormous eyes slowly opened. They were intelligent eyes, filled with an ancient wisdom that made Taeyeon's breath catch in his throat. The being looked directly at their submersible, and in those eyes, Taeyeon saw something that changed everything. He saw a plea for help. "We have to do something," Taeyeon said quietly. "Are you crazy?" Minho's voice rose in panic. "That thing could crush us without even trying." "It's dying," Taeyeon replied, his voice filled with certainty. "Look at it, really look at it." The creature's breathing was growing weaker. Its massive body was slowly being crushed by the weight of rocks and debris. Without help, it would die in this dark, lonely place at the bottom of the world. "Taeyeon," Yoonji said softly, "our orders are to observe and record. We're not equipped for a rescue operation." But Taeyeon was already moving their submersible closer to the trapped creature. Something deep in his human heart refused to let any living being die alone, no matter how strange or impossible it might be. Taeyeon guided their submersible closer to the trapped creature, his hands steady on the controls despite his racing heart. The massive being watched them approach with those ancient, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge beyond human understanding. "Taeyeon, this is insane," Minho said, his voice tight with fear. "We don't know what that thing is capable of. It could be dangerous." "Look at it, Minho," Taeyeon replied calmly. "Does it look dangerous to you right now?" The creature was clearly in distress. Its breathing had grown even more labored, and a soft, low sound was coming from its throat. It was a sound of pain, unmistakable in any language or species. Juwon leaned forward in her seat, her scientific mind warring with her survival instincts. Even if we wanted to help, how could we possibly move those rocks? Each one must weigh several tons. "Our mechanical arms are designed for heavy lifting," Taeyeon said, already extending the submersible's robotic appendages, "and we have cutting tools for taking samples. Maybe we can use them to break up the smaller rocks." "Our oxygen supply is only good for 6 more hours, Yoonji warned, monitoring their life support systems. "If we use too much power on a rescue attempt, we might not have enough to get back to the surface." The creature made that low sound again, weaker this time. Its massive head turned slightly toward their small craft, and Taeyeon could see hope flickering in those enormous eyes. The being somehow understood that these tiny visitors might be its only chance for survival. "I can't just watch it die," Taeyeon said quietly. "I won't." He activated the mechanical arms and began working on the smallest rocks first. The submersible's motors strained as they lifted each piece of debris, moving it carefully away from the creature's body. Progress was slow, but gradually they began to clear a path around the being's chest area. The creature remained perfectly still during their work, as if it understood that any sudden movement might damage their fragile rescue vehicle. Its intelligence was becoming more obvious with each passing minute. "This is incredible," whispered Juwon, documenting everything with their cameras. "The way it's cooperating with us, it's almost like it understands what we're trying to do." "It does understand," said Taeyeon with certainty. "Look at its eyes. When we move each rock, it's tracking our progress." Hours passed as they worked. Minho constantly checked their power levels and structural integrity while Yoonji maintained contact with the surface team. The people above were growing concerned about their extended dive time, but Taiyun asked for just a little more time. "We're making real progress," he reported to the surface. "Whatever this is, it's alive, and it needs our help." As they cleared more debris, they could see the full extent of the creature's injuries. Its right side was badly bruised, and one of its gill structures was damaged. But most concerning was the large boulder that had pinned its lower body against the seafloor. "That rock is too big for our equipment," Minho said, studying the massive stone. "It must weigh 50 tons or more." Taeyun studied the problem from different angles. The boulder was indeed too large to lift directly, but maybe they didn't need to move it entirely. If they could just shift it enough to create some space ... double quote. "What if we use our thrusters?" he suggested. "We could position ourselves against the rock and push while using the mechanical arms to guide it." "That's incredibly risky," Yinji said. "If our hull gets damaged down here, we're dead." "And if we do nothing, that creature is dead?" Taeyun replied. The massive being seemed to sense their discussion. It made a different sound now, deeper and more complex. Somehow, the sound conveyed gratitude, even though they hadn't succeeded. "Yet, it's thanking us," Jawan said in amazement. "Even though we haven't freed it yet, it knows we're trying to help." This realization strengthened Taeyun's resolve. He positioned their submersible carefully against the large boulder, making sure their hull was protected by smaller rocks that could absorb some of the pressure. "Everyone hold on," he warned his team. "This is going to be rough." He fired their thrusters at maximum power. The submersible shuddered and groaned as it pushed against the massive stone. Their motors screamed in protest, but slowly, incredibly slowly, the boulder began to shift. "It's working," shouted Minho over the noise of their straining engines. "The rock is moving." The creature felt the pressure easing on its body and made another sound, this one clearly expressing relief. As soon as there was enough space, it carefully pulled its lower body free from the trap, but their work wasn't finished. The creature's damaged gills were still struggling to process the water properly. Taeyun noticed that its breathing was irregular and weak. "Its oxygen processing is damaged," Jawan observed. "In humans, we'd need artificial respiration. But how do you give mouth-to-mouth to a creature that size?" Taeyun had an idea that terrified his teammates. He began venting some of their emergency oxygen supply directly into the water near the creature's gills. "Are you completely insane?" Minho yelled. "That's our backup air supply. If our main system fails, we're going to need that to get home. If we don't help it now, there won't be any point in going home," Taeyun replied. "I didn't come this far just to watch it suffocate." The oxygen bubble swirled around the creature's damaged gills. Almost immediately, its breathing began to strengthen and regulate. The massive being turned its head toward their submersible and looked directly at Taeyun through the POR to OA dot moment. Something extraordinary happened. A connection formed between two completely different species, based on nothing more than one being's determination to help another in need. The creature's eyes, now clear and strong, seemed to convey a message that Taeyun felt in his heart rather than heard with his ears. It was a message of gratitude, but also something more. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. The rescued being was trying to communicate, and somehow, impossibly, Taeyun was beginning to understand. The rescued creature floated freely in the dark water, its massive form moving with surprising grace. Its breathing had returned to normal, and the intelligence in its eyes seemed brighter than before. Taeyun kept their submersible at a respectful distance, watching as the being tested its newly freed limbs. "Look at how it moves," whispered Jiwan, her voice filled with wonder. "Every movement is deliberate, controlled. This isn't just an animal. This is something much more." The creature turned its enormous head toward their small craft and made a series of complex sounds. The tones were deep and musical, unlike anything in Earth's oceans. But somehow, as Taeyun listened, the sounds began to form patterns in his mind. "Can you hear that?" he asked his teammates. "It's almost like it's trying to talk to us," finished Yoonji, her communication equipment picking up strange signals. My instruments are going crazy. There's some kind of energy transmission coming from that thing. Suddenly, Taeyun felt a gentle pressure in his mind, like someone knocking softly on a door. The sensation was strange, but not frightening. Instinctively, he relaxed his mental barriers and allowed the contact to strengthen. A voice, calm and ancient, spoke directly into his thoughts. "Thank you, small brave one. You have saved my life when you could have simply observed and departed." Taeyun's eyes widened in shock. The voice was definitely not his own thoughts. It carried emotions and memories that belonged to someone else. Someone far older and more experienced than any human. "You can understand me?" Taeyun said aloud, hoping the creature could somehow hear his response. "Yes, young human. My name is Kangmin, though that is how your mind chooses to translate the concept of my identity. I am what your legends might call a dragon, though my people prefer the term Ryujin." The other three team members stared at Taeyun in confusion as he seemed to have a conversation with empty air. "Taeyun, who are you talking to?" asked Minho, nervously. "The creature," Taeyun replied, still maintaining mental contact with Kangmin. "His name is Kangmin, and he's speaking directly into my mind." Jiwon quickly activated her recording equipment. "This is impossible, telepathic communication between species. There's no scientific basis for such a phenomenon." Kangmin seemed amused by their confusion. "Your friend seeks scientific understanding. Perhaps I can accommodate that desire." Suddenly, all four humans felt the gentle mental touch. Eunji gasped as her communication equipment lit up with new signals, while Minho and Jiwon both heard the ancient voice speaking directly to their consciousness. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Kangmin of the Ryujin people. What you call telepathy is simply a natural ability of my species. We communicate through direct mind contact across vast distances." "This is incredible," breathed Jiwon. "A completely alien form of life, capable of telepathic communication? Where do you come from?" Images flowed into their minds, showing them a beautiful world covered in vast oceans under two golden suns. Cities of coral and crystal rose from the seafloor, inhabited by beings like Kangmin. It was a place of peace and ancient wisdom, where the Ryujin had lived for millions of years. "My homeworld is called Akolan," Kangmin explained. "We are an old race, much older than humanity. For countless centuries we have traveled the stars, exploring and learning about other forms of life." "You're an alien," Minho said, his engineer's mind struggling to accept the reality. "A real alien here on Earth. I have been here for 300 of your years," Kangmin confirmed. "My ship crashed in your ocean during a reconnaissance mission. I have been trapped beneath the rocks for the past 50 years, slowly weakening." "As my breathing apparatus failed, a reconnaissance mission?" Eunji asked, her communication specialist instincts focusing on the important details. "You were studying us?" "Yes, but not in the way you might fear. My people observe many developing species throughout the galaxy. We watch, we learn, but we do not interfere. It is our way." The massive dragon moved closer to their submersible, his movements careful and non-threatening. Through the mental link, they could feel his genuine gratitude and something else, something that felt like surprise. "In all our travels across the galaxy, we have encountered many intelligent species," Kangmin continued. "Some are peaceful, others are warlike. Some are curious, others are fearful. But never, in all our observations, have we witnessed what you humans did today." "What do you mean?" asked Taeyun. "You risked your lives to save a complete stranger. Not just any stranger, but a being so different from yourselves that you could not even be certain I was truly alive. You had no knowledge of my intelligence, my intentions, or my capabilities, yet you chose to help." Images flowed through the mental link, showing them other species the Ryujin had encountered. Some had fled upon discovering Kangmin's crashed ship. Others had tried to capture or study him. A few had attempted to communicate, but only for their own benefit. "No species has ever simply tried to save my life without expecting anything in return," Kangmin said, his mental voice filled with wonder. This quality of selfless compassion appears to be unique to humanity. Surely other species help each other, protested Juan. They help their own kind, yes. Sometimes they form alliances for mutual benefit. But what you did today, risking everything, for a being you had never seen before, that is something we have never observed in our travels. Taeyun felt a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. We just couldn't watch you die. It seemed wrong to leave you trapped. And that, young human, is exactly what makes your species so remarkable. You have a natural instinct to preserve life, even when logic suggests you should protect yourselves instead. The dragon's massive form moved through the water with graceful ease, demonstrating that he was now fully recovered from his ordeal. But through their mental connection, the humans could sense that Kangmin was deeply troubled about something. There is something else I must tell you, he said, his mental voice growing serious. Something that will be difficult for you to hear. Your act of compassion today has revealed humanity to forces that wish you harm. What do you mean? Taeyun asked, though he felt a chill of fear at the dragon's ominous tone. My people are not the only ones who have been watching Earth. The water around them seemed to grow colder as Kangmin's words settled into their minds. Taeyun felt his blood freeze in his veins, and he watched as his teammates' faces turned pale with the same creeping dread that was filling his own heart. What do you mean, others have been watching us? Unji asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kangmin's massive form moved closer to their submersible, and through their mental link, they could feel the weight of ancient knowledge and terrible responsibility pressing down on the dragon's consciousness. There exists a coalition of species known as the Void Syndicate, Kangmin explained, his mental voice heavy with regret. They are old, powerful, and utterly without the compassion that defines your species. For the past century, they have been monitoring Earth's development. Images flowed into their minds, showing them glimpses of dark ships moving through space, beings of various alien forms meeting in shadowy councils, and most terrifyingly detailed surveillance data of Earth's major cities and military installations. They've been studying us like laboratory animals, Minho said, his engineering mind grasping the implications immediately. Worse than that, Kangmin replied. They have been evaluating whether humanity poses a threat to their established order. And 3 months ago, they reached their decision. Taeyun's hands gripped the submersible's controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. What decision? Complete extermination. Every human on Earth is to be eliminated within the next 2 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the gentle hum of their life support system seemed muted as the 4 humans struggled to process this information. Juan was the first to find her voice. But why? We haven't even left our own solar system yet. How could we possibly threaten them? You misunderstand the nature of the threat they perceive, Kangmin said sadly. It is not your technology they fear, though you are advancing rapidly. It is not your weapons, though you have created some impressive ones. What terrifies the Syndicate is your unpredictability and your dangerous compassion. Dangerous compassion? Taeyun repeated, confused, through their mental link. Kangmin showed them how other species typically behaved when encountering the unknown. Most followed predictable patterns, either fleeing from potential threats or trying to exploit new discoveries. For their own benefit, these behaviors could be calculated, anticipated, and controlled. But humans are different, Kangmin continued. You do things that make no logical sense from a survival perspective. You risk your lives for strangers. You sacrifice your own interests. To help others, you show mercy to enemies. These behaviors cannot be predicted or controlled. And that scares them? Asked Minho. Terrifies them, Kangmin confirmed. The Syndicate's power structure depends on predictable behavior from all species. They maintain control through fear, greed, and self-interest. But a species that acts based on compassion instead of self-preservation is completely outside their understanding. Yunji was monitoring her communication equipment when alarms suddenly started blaring. I'm picking up transmissions, she announced urgently. Coded signals that don't match any Earth-based communication protocols. Those are Syndicate surveillance reports, Kangmin said grimly. They have been watching this encounter. Your rescue of me has been recorded and analyzed. What does that mean for us? Taiyan asked, though he dreaded the answer. It means their timeline has just accelerated. My rescue proves everything they feared about humanity. Not only did you save a completely alien being, but you did it at great risk to yourselves, with no possible benefit. This single act of compassion has confirmed their worst fears about your species. The dragon's mental voice carried a deep sadness as he continued. The Syndicate fleet was already en route to Earth, but they were planning to arrive in 18 months. Now they will come within 6 months. They cannot allow your dangerous compassion to spread to other species. Spread to other species? Gawan asked. Throughout the galaxy, most intelligent beings follow the Syndicate's model of self-interest. Above all else. But if they were to encounter humans and learn about your way of thinking, it could start a revolution of compassion that would destroy the Syndicate's control. Taiyan felt sick as the full implications hit him. His simple decision to save a drowning creature had somehow doomed his entire species. This is my fault, he said quietly. I should have left you trapped. No, Kangman's response was immediate and firm. What you did today was the most beautiful thing I have witnessed in 3 centuries of life. The fact that such goodness exists in the universe is worth any price. Easy for you to say, Minho snapped, fear making him angry. You're not the one facing extinction. But I am, Kangman replied calmly. If the Syndicate learns that I am alive and that I have made contact with humans, my own people will be forced to choose sides. Most likely, they will abandon me to preserve their neutrality. Through their mental connection, they felt the dragon's internal struggle. His people, the Rujin, had maintained strict neutrality in galactic affairs for millions of years. They observed but never interfered, never took sides in conflicts between other species. The Rujin Council voted to remain neutral regarding humanity's fate, Kangman revealed. They decided that your species' ultimate survival or destruction was not their concern? And you agreed with that decision? Yunji asked. I did until today. Until I experienced your compassion firsthand. Now I understand that allowing humanity to be destroyed would be the greatest tragedy in galactic history. Taeyun stared through the porthole at Kangman's enormous eyes, seeing the weight of an impossible decision reflected there. What are you saying? I am saying that I cannot remain neutral. Not after what you have shown me. If humanity is to survive, you will need allies who understand advanced technology and space warfare. You're talking about betraying your own people's neutrality. Yuan said softly. I'm talking about choosing what is right over what is safe, Kangman replied. Your species has already taught me that sometimes the right choice requires great sacrifice. The magnitude of their situation was almost too much to comprehend. Earth faced extinction from forces beyond their understanding, and their only potential ally was a single dragon whose help would cost him everything he had ever known. How many ships are coming? Taeyun asked, forcing himself to focus on practical matters. The initial assault force consists of 47 vessels, each capable of devastating entire continents. But if humanity proves more resilient than expected, they have secondary fleets that could be called upon. And Earth's military capabilities? Primitive by Syndicate standards, but you have advantages they do not expect. Your unpredictability, your willingness to sacrifice for others, and most importantly, your ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. Kangman paused before adding the most crucial piece of information. There is one more thing. Hidden in my crashed ship are technological blueprints that could help level the fighting field. But retrieving them will be dangerous, and using them will require the cooperation of your entire species. Taeyun looked at his teammates, seeing his own determination reflected in their faces. They had started this day as marine researchers seeking to solve a scientific mystery. Now they were Earth's first ambassadors to an alien species and possibly humanity's only hope for survival. Where is your ship? He asked. 3 kilometers from here, buried under 2 centuries of sediment. But Taeyun, you must understand what you are choosing. If you help me recover that technology, there will be no turning back. You will be committed to a war that will determine the fate of compassion itself in this galaxy. Taeyun didn't hesitate. Then we'd better get started. Kangmin led them through the dark waters toward his hidden ship, moving with the fluid grace of a creature born to the depths. Their submersible followed at a safe distance, its lights barely penetrating the eternal darkness of the ocean floor. The ship has been buried for so long, Kangmin explained through their mental link. I had given up hope of ever recovering it. But with your technology and my knowledge of its location, we might be able to access the main computer systems. As they traveled, Yunji continued monitoring the strange transmissions her equipment was picking up. The signal strength is increasing, she reported. Whatever's watching us is getting closer. Syndicate surveillance drones, Kangmin confirmed grimly. They have been tracking this area since they detected the unusual electromagnetic activity from my ship's failing systems. They reached a flat area of the seafloor that looked no different from any other section of the abyssal plain. But when Kangmin positioned himself over a specific spot and began using his powerful limbs to dig, their lights revealed the unmistakable outline of artificial construction beneath the sediment. It's really there, whispered Jiwan in amazement. An actual alien spacecraft. Working together, they spent hours clearing away centuries of accumulated sediment. The ship that gradually emerged was unlike anything from human imagination. It was organic in appearance, its hull covered in the same scale-like patterns as Kangmin's body, but clearly manufactured with technologies far beyond Earth's capabilities. My people grow their ships rather than build them, Kangmin explained as he showed them how to access the vessel's systems. This ship is actually alive in a sense, though it has been in deep hibernation since the crash. Minho studied the exposed sections with his engineer's eye. The hull material is incredible. After 3 centuries underwater, there's no corrosion at all. Rujin biotechnology is designed to last for millions of years, Kangmin said with pride. But the real treasures are inside the data cores. They managed to create an air pocket inside a partially flooded section of the ship, allowing the humans to work directly with the alien technology. The control systems were completely unlike anything they had ever seen, but Kangmin patiently taught them how to interface with the living computers. These data files contain the complete technical specifications for Rujin defensive systems, Kangmin explained as he guided Taeyun through the retrieval process. Shield generators, energy weapons, faster-than-light communication, and most importantly, the designs for quantum displacement drives. What do those do? Asked Yunji, documenting everything with her recording equipment. They allow a ship to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, making it nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. With this technology, Earth's military forces could become far more effective than their numbers would suggest. But as they worked to download the precious data, Kangmin's expression grew increasingly troubled. Through their mental link, they could feel his internal conflict intensifying. What's wrong? Taeyun asked. By sharing this technology with you, I am violating every principle my people have held sacred for millions of years. The Rujin Council will consider me a traitor. I will be exiled from my homeworld and hunted by my own kind. You don't have to do this, Jiwan said softly. We understand the sacrifice you're making. That is exactly why I must do this, Kangmin replied. Your species has shown me that some things are more important than personal safety or even loyalty to one's own people. The universe will be a darker place if your compassion is extinguished. As the data transfer continued, they began receiving urgent communications from the surface. The research vessel above was detecting multiple fast-moving objects approaching their position. Syndicate attack drones, Kangmin announced grimly. They have decided to eliminate all evidence of our contact. How long before they arrive? Minho asked, checking their submersible's power levels. Approximately 12 minutes. But there is something else you must know. The data transfer is only 60% complete, and these drones carry enough firepower to destroy everything within a 5-kilometer radius. Taeyun made a quick decision. Yunji, transmit everything we've gathered so far to the surface. Make sure our people get this technology even if we don't make it back. As Yunji worked frantically to upload their data, Kangmin moved to the ship's weapon systems. This vessel still has some defensive capabilities remaining. I can hold off the drones long enough for you to escape, but I will not survive the encounter. No, Taiyuan said firmly. We're not leaving you behind. There has to be another way. Your compassion does you credit, but this is the logical choice. One life to save your entire species. Since when do humans make logical choices? Minho said with a grim smile. Taiyuan's right. We go together or not at all. Through their mental link, they felt Kangmin's amazement at their continued willingness to risk everything for his safety. It reinforced his conviction that humanity was worth saving, even as it made their situation more desperate. There is one possibility, Kangmin said slowly. If we can restore power to the ship's quantum displacement drive, we might be able to escape. But the power requirements would drain my life force significantly. What does that mean? Asked Juwon. Yujin can channel their own bioenergy into their ship's systems in emergencies. But doing so ages us rapidly. I would survive, but I would lose several centuries of lifespan. That's still better than dying today, Taiyuan pointed out as the enemy drones approached. Kangmin began the dangerous process of linking his life force to the ship's power systems. The scale-like patterns on his body began glowing with brilliant bioluminescence as incredible amounts of energy flowed through him into the vessel. It's working, Minho shouted as the ship's systems came online around them. The quantum drive is initializing, but the process was taking too long. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the Syndicate drones beginning their attack run. Weapons that could vaporize mountains were being aimed at their location. 30 seconds until quantum. Displacement is ready, Kangmin reported, his mental voice strained by the enormous effort he was making. 20 seconds until the drones fire, Yunji announced, tracking their approach. It was going to be too close. But just as the situation seemed hopeless, something unexpected happened. The research vessel above them launched every emergency flare and distress beacon it carried, creating a brilliant display of lights and electromagnetic interference. The surface team is jamming the drone's targeting systems, Yunji realized. They're buying us time. It was just enough. As the Syndicate weapons fired, Kangmin completed the quantum displacement sequence. Their entire section of the ocean floor seemed to shimmer and bend, and suddenly they were elsewhere, floating safely in the depths several hundred kilometers away, but their escape came at a terrible cost. Kangmin's once brilliant scales had dulled significantly, and through their mental link, they could feel how much the effort had weakened him. The surface team, Taiyuan said urgently. Are they safe? The drones were focused on this location. Kangmin replied wearily. Your people above should be unharmed. And more importantly, they now have the technology data that could save your world. As they made their way back toward the surface, Kangmin shared one final piece of crucial information. The technology I have given you will help level the battlefield, but it will not be enough on its own. The Syndicate's advantage in numbers and experience is too great. Then what hope do we have? Asked Taiyuan. The same hope that drove you to save my life, Kangmin replied. Your greatest weapon is not any technology I can share with you. It is your ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. Even among the Syndicate, there are those who have grown tired of their empire of fear. You think some of them might switch sides? I think that once they see how humans fight, not for conquest but for the right to show compassion, to others, some of them will remember what they have lost in themselves. Your example could fracture the Syndicate from within. As they ascended toward the light above, carrying technology that could change the course of human history, Taiyuan realized that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. They had to convince an entire world to unite against an enemy most people didn't even know existed. But if they could do that, if humanity could come together and fight not just for survival but for the right to remain compassionate in a cruel universe, they might just have a chance. 6 months later, the sky above Earth burned with the light of an alien invasion. The Void Syndicate fleet had arrived exactly when Kangmin predicted. 47 massive warships emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation around the planet, but they did not find the primitive, divided world they expected. In the months following Taeyeon's encounter with Kangmin, humanity had accomplished what many thought impossible. The alien technology recovered from the dragon ship had been shared freely among all nations, and for the first time in human history, the entire species worked together toward a single goal. South Korea's advanced submarine fleet had been the first to integrate the new technologies, but soon ships from every nation carried quantum displacement drives and energy shields based on Ryujin designs. The old divisions between countries seemed meaningless when faced with extinction. Taeyeon stood on the bridge of the flagship Seoul's Pride, now serving as Earth's primary ambassador to their dragon ally. Beside him, Kangmin had regained much of his strength over the past months, though the silver streaks in his scales served as a permanent reminder of his sacrifice. "Their formation is impressive," Kangmin observed as they watched the Syndicate fleet take positions around Earth. "But they are making the same mistake they always make." "What mistake is that?" asked Minho, who now served as chief engineer for humanity's combined fleet. "They assume that superior firepower guarantees victory. They have never faced an enemy that fights for something greater than survival." The Syndicate commander's message came through on all frequencies, transmitted in dozens of Earth languages. The alien's voice was cold and mechanical, carrying the absolute certainty of overwhelming power. "Humans of Earth, you have been judged unfit for continued existence. Your dangerous unpredictability and misguided compassion threaten the stability of galactic civilization. Surrender now, and your extinction will be swift." Taeyeon activated the response channel, his voice carrying to every ship in both fleets and to monitoring stations across the galaxy. "To the Void Syndicate fleet, this is Ambassador Taeyeon Kim of Earth. We reject your ultimatum. We will not surrender our right to show compassion to others, and we will not allow fear to govern our actions. You cannot hope to match our firepower." The Syndicate commander replied, "Our weapons can destroy planets. Your primitive technology is no threat to us." "You're right," Taeyeon admitted. "We can't match your firepower, but that was never our plan." The battle began with the Syndicate's opening salvo, energy beams capable of boiling oceans lancing toward Earth's defensive fleet, but instead of trying to meet force with force, the human ships did something completely unexpected. They scattered, using their quantum displacement drives. Earth's vessels began moving in patterns that defied conventional space warfare tactics. Instead of forming defensive lines or attempting direct engagement, they spread out across the solar system, drawing the Syndicate ships away from Earth. "What are they doing?" the Syndicate commander demanded as his forces found themselves chasing enemies that appeared and disappeared seemingly at random. "They're protecting something," Kaiman explained through the communication channel. "But not what you think." As the battle spread throughout the solar system, something remarkable began happening. Human ships that encountered damaged Syndicate vessels stopped to offer aid. When a Syndicate destroyer suffered engine failure after pushing its systems too hard in pursuit, the nearest Earth ship immediately moved to assist. "This is Captain Park of the Bison's Dream," came the transmission. "Syndicate vessel, your engine core is about to breach. We're sending repair drones to help stabilize your systems." The Syndicate crew was stunned into silence. In the middle of a battle for their species' survival, humans were trying to save their enemies' lives. This pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human ships shared their medical supplies with injured alien crews. They guided disabled enemy vessels away from dangerous asteroid fields. When a Syndicate cruiser lost life support, 3 Earth ships immediately responded with emergency supplies. "This is impossible," transmitted one of the Syndicate captains. "Why are you helping us? We came here to destroy you." "Because that's what we do," replied Commander Ji-won from the research vessel New Horizon. "We help those who need it, regardless of who they are." The psychological impact on the Syndicate forces was devastating. Their entire society was built on the principle that all species acted purely from self-interest. The idea that anyone would risk their lives to save Enemies was completely outside their understanding. Cracks began appearing in their formation, as individual captains hesitated to fire on ships that had just saved their crew members. Some syndicate vessels began withdrawing from combat entirely, their crews unable to reconcile their orders with what they were witnessing, but the battle's true turning point came when the syndicate flagship, Dominion's Will, suffered a catastrophic power failure during combat with Soul's Pride. The massive vessel, carrying over 10,000 crew members, was falling toward Earth's atmosphere where it would burn up completely. Taeyun made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. All ships converge on the Dominion's Will, he ordered. We're going to save them. Sir, Minho protested, that's the enemy flagship. If we save them, they'll just continue the attack. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Taeyun replied. Right now, 10,000 people are about to die, and we're the only ones who can help them. Every human ship in the solar system abandoned their tactical positions to assist in the rescue. Using their quantum displacement drives and tractor beam technology adapted from Kangman's ship, they managed to stabilize the massive syndicate vessel and prevent its destruction. The rescue was broadcast live throughout the galaxy by Yunji, who had become Earth's primary communications coordinator. Species across hundreds of worlds watched as humans risked everything to save the lives of those who had come to destroy them. The syndicate commander, Admiral Vexstar, found himself face-to-face with Taeyun via holographic communication after his rescue. The alien's multiple eyes showed confusion and something that might have been shame. I do not understand, Vexstar said slowly. My fleet came here to exterminate your species. Why did you save us? Because that's who we are, Taeyun replied simply. We don't have to understand someone to recognize that their life has value. The transmission was interrupted by incoming messages from across the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed by the Syndicate for centuries were rising in rebellion, inspired by humanity's example. The empire of fear that had ruled for millennia was crumbling as beings remembered what it meant to show compassion. Admiral Vexstar stared at the tactical displays showing his crumbling empire, then looked back at the human who had saved his life. The Council of Fear predicted that your compassion would be dangerous, he said quietly. They were right. It is the most dangerous force in the universe because it makes others want to be better than they are. Is that such a bad thing? Taeyun asked. For the first time in his long life, Vexstar smiled. No, human Taeyun. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. The Syndicate fleet formally surrendered 3 hours later, not because they were defeated in battle, but because their crews could no longer bring themselves to fight against people who had shown them such kindness. In the aftermath, as peace negotiations began and the galaxy started the long process of rebuilding itself around principles of compassion rather than fear, Taeyun found himself back where it all started, diving in Earth's oceans with his friend Kangmin. Do you ever regret that day when you decided to save me? The dragon asked as they explored a coral reef in the shallow waters off Korea's coast. Taeyun watched a school of fish swim peacefully around them, thinking about how a simple act of kindness had changed the fate of countless worlds. Never. He replied, because you taught me something important. It doesn't matter how small or insignificant you think you are. One act of compassion can change everything. Above them, the sky showed the lights of ships from dozens of species, all working together to build a better galaxy. And in the depths of the ocean, a human and a dragon continued their friendship, searching not for scientific discoveries, but for any creature that might need their help, because that's what humans do. They save those who need saving, no matter the cost. And sometimes that's enough to save the universe itself.